Some stories take us straight into someone's life, as if we could feel their joys, challenges, and uncertainties along the way. Now I'm going to tell an account that made me reflect on the power of human relationships and the family bonds that at times can be as complicated as they are memorable. Well, let's continue.
Report: The Mother-in-Law Who Wanted My Place. Submitted by Claudia, adapted for narration. Some stories transport us directly into someone's life as if we could feel their joys, challenges, and uncertainties along the way. Now I will narrate an account that made me reflect on the power of human relationships and the family. Bonds that can sometimes be as complicated as they are unforgettable. Well, let's continue. My name is Claudia. I grew up in a small rural town in West Texas where I spent most of my life. During my college years in Austin, I crossed paths with Fernando, a hardworking and dedicated young man who also came from a nearby rural area but had spent most of his life studying and getting by in other small towns across Texas in the Southwest. He had a captivating kindness that charmed me from the very beginning. It didn't take long for our relationship to deepen, and a little over a year later we decided to get married. The ceremony was modest. Fernando's family couldn't afford the costs of traveling and organizing something larger. Despite the limitations, we were radiant and full of plans for the future. For our honeymoon, we chose a road trip, visiting several small Texas towns until we reached the rural area near Lubbock, where his family lived. There I would finally meet Fernando's parents, and for a while, we would make that place our home while he finished his studies. Our arrival was marked by Fernando's excitement in introducing me to his parents. As soon as we stepped out of the car, in front of the house, both of them came toward us smiling. I extended my hand to greet his mother, Mrs. Lords, but she completely ignored me, choosing instead to hug Fernando enthusiastically. His father, on the other hand, was welcoming and shook my hand firmly and expressed his happiness at meeting me. Mrs. Lords' initial indifference unsettled me, but I tried to brush it off, thinking it might have been a misunderstanding. However, over time it became clear that her attitude was intentional. She was a serious-looking woman of average height, with eyes that seemed to pierce through anyone who met her gaze. Her rigid posture made me uncomfortable. When I met Fernando's siblings and their spouses, I felt slightly more welcomed, although they remained reserved. The younger sisters, still teenagers, barely interacted with me. Later that afternoon, while alone in the bathroom, I began questioning whether I had acted too hastily by marrying without knowing his family better. Since we didn't have a home of our own, they offered us a simple room at the back of the house, a space built with cement blocks and covered with a tin roof. It was small, but it met our temporary needs. As we arranged our belongings, I noticed Fernando excitedly talking with his father about the future while I tried to adapt to the new routine. Soon, small gestures of rejection from Mrs. Lords began to appear. During dinner, for example, she served me a much smaller portion than everyone else, claiming she had forgotten to account for me while cooking. I tried to ignore these incidents, but they only became more frequent. While Fernando searched for a job, I decided to use my time productively. I remembered the skills my mother had taught me and began crocheting handbags with materials purchased from a local craft store. I planned to sell them at a nearby shop to supplement our income. I spent many hours in that stuffy little room, which became my refuge from my mother-in-law's looks and remarks. One day, after finishing several handbags, I carefully placed them on the bed and went to take a shower. When I returned, all of them were torn, as if someone had done it deliberately. I asked Mrs. Lords what had happened, but she simply shrugged, suggesting that the dog might be responsible. However, the glint in her eyes told me she knew far more than she was willing to admit. As the days passed, my relationship with my mother-in-law became even more complicated. Her ironic comments and hostile gestures were constant, but I insisted on staying calm, believing that with time the situation might improve. Yet the atmosphere in the house grew heavier and heavier, as if something invisible were pressing down on me, making the environment almost unbearable. It felt like I was under constant surveillance. Every move I made was scrutinized, as though Mrs. Lords were waiting for any mistake to reinforce her disapproval. She didn't need to say much. Her looks and subtle actions clearly conveyed what she thought of me. One day, while Fernando went out with his father to take care of some errands, we received an unexpected visit. His godmother, Mrs. Arminda. Tall and thin, she had a striking presence. Her deep voice carried natural authority, and every word she spoke seemed to echo through the room. As soon as we were introduced, I felt an inexplicable discomfort. Her gaze seemed to strip me bare, and despite her polite words, there was a coldness and disdain in her tone that was impossible to ignore. While Fernando was out, I remained in the living room with Mrs. Lords and Mrs. Arminda. I tried to retreat to the bedroom and focus on my crochet, but my mother-in-law insisted it would be rude to leave the guest alone. With no choice, I sat with them. Mrs. Arminda then began bombarding me with questions about my family, my plans, and even when we intended to have children. Although the questions might have seemed harmless, the tone in which they were asked was sharp, almost accusatory. When Fernando returned, he was greeted enthusiastically by Mrs. Arminda, who called him my dear son, while casually remarking that I was so thin it looked like I wasn't eating properly. Fernando simply smiled, unaware of the provocation. Meanwhile, I withdrew to the bedroom, trying to contain my discomfort. By then, I had finished several handbags and was about to take them to the shop to sell. Before leaving, I carefully arranged them on the bed and went to get some water. When I returned, they were completely destroyed, as if they had been intentionally cut or bitten. I asked my mother-in-law what might have happened, and she blamed the house dog, a calm animal that spent most of its time sleeping, but the sparkle in her eyes betrayed her. Shortly afterward, Fernando found a job, bringing much-needed relief. With his first paycheck, we began searching for a place where we could have more privacy. We found a modest house near the center of the small town. Despite its condition, it represented our freedom. The move felt like a breath of renewal. Away from my mother-in-law's constant criticism, I finally felt I could breathe. Again, with what little we had, I began organizing our new home and returned to crocheting. To my surprise, the handbags sold well, but the peace didn't last long. A few weeks after we moved, I began noticing strange things. Packages would appear at the door without a sender, wilted flowers, an old family photo of Fernando's, with my face scratched out in red ink. One night when I opened the door, I found a handwritten note. "There is no place for you here." The handwriting was identical to Mrs. Lords's. Fernando confronted his mother. She denied everything, said I was imagining things and that I needed help, but the look she gave me the last time I saw her, through the car window as we drove away, was pure triumph, as if she had achieved what she wanted, to push me away and make me doubt myself. Today we live in another city. Fernando and I are still together, but her shadow lingers. Sometimes, when I open the front door, I catch a familiar scent, old perfume, mixed with something sour like the mustiness of an old house, and I hear light footsteps in the hallway, footsteps that stop exactly where I stand. I know she hasn't come physically, but part of her stayed, and it still wants my place. Sometimes when I put the handbags I crocheted up for sale, I feel a chill, as if someone is watching, as if she were still here, waiting. For the moment, I let my guard down, and I never let my guard down, because I know that somewhere she is still waiting. But the worst wasn't the note nor the packages. The worst came afterward. A week after we moved, my phone began receiving messages from an unknown number. No words, just photos. Photos of our new house, taken from outside. The kitchen window, the back door, the bedroom where I slept, all taken at night, with flash, as if whoever was taking them wanted me to know they were there. Fernando called the police. They said it was probably a mistake, that without a direct threat there was nothing they could do. But I knew. I recognized the angle of the photos. It was the same spot where Mrs. Lords used to stand, looking out at the street of the old house. The same angle she used to watch who came and went. I changed my number, blocked everything, but the messages continued, from the same number I never saved. New photos, always at night, always of the house, always of me, sleeping, reading, cooking, as if she were inside, as if she knew every corner. One night I woke up to a noise, a click. Like a door slowly opening, I got up. The house was dark. Fernando was asleep. I went to the kitchen. The back door was slightly open. I had locked it. I always locked it. I closed it, locked it again. But when I returned to the bedroom, I saw something on the hallway wall. A shadow. Tall, thin. Still, it didn't move. It was just there, looking at me. I screamed. Fernando woke up, turned on the light. The shadow vanished. But on the floor, where it had been, a footprint. Wet, bare, small, like Mrs. Lords's foot. We moved again, farther away, to a city she would never know. But I still feel it. When I close my eyes at night, I feel her gaze, not at the windows, not at the door, inside me, as if she had entered when I